Hi and welcome to Studio SN. My name is Sara Naumann and today we're block print stamping and embossing. Block print stamping is a great way to get a beautiful handcrafted look to your cards. Now you can stamp using just acrylic paint, which is the traditional method, but you can also incorporate embossing powder. And if we look at this pretty peacock focal here on my card, as I'm tilting this, I think you can see the shine on here. Well, that is embossing powder that's been applied after the image has been stamped with acrylic paint. Now we'll talk about this process, which is a really easy one to do, and then we'll also look into how to create this really cool background using foil. And this was a happy accident that happened here in my studio, so I'm pretty excited to share that technique with you as well. So let's start with our stamping first, and we'll take it from there. When you're doing block print stamping, you need to have a couple of specific things on hand. You'll want to have a surface, a stamping surface that's got a bit more give than your normal craft table. And I'll show you the stamp in a minute and you'll see why that is. But with a block print stamping, you want to have something that's got some bounce to it, if you will. I'm working onto a rubber computer mouse pad, so remember those? So you may have one of those around your house. That's going to be a perfect surface. You can also fold over a tea towel or something, and that should give you enough bounce as well. Now you'll also of course need your stamp. So when you're looking at the stamp, a traditional block print stamp is going to look something like this. It's a big wooden stamp that has been hand carved, and this is going to give you a really beautiful handcrafted effect. Now these are carved by artisans, so you're actually getting a work of art in itself, as well as something that will enable you to create your own works of art. So you can see it's made of solid wood and it has been carved because, unlike a traditional red rubber stamp or a clear acrylic stamp, this doesn't have any squishiness to it, which is why you need to have something underneath your cardstock or paper to give you that bounce. So you need to have your block. Again, this is from Blockwallah, and this is the Peacock with Hearts design. Now you're also going to need some paint, and an acrylic paint is going to be the best option. So this is from PaperArtsy. It's the Fresco Finish chalk acrylic. This is an orchid, and it is an opaque paint, which means it's going to give me a high opacity and high coverage. This paint also has a really nice consistency. It's not too watery and it's not too thick, so it's perfect for this technique. Now I need to have an applicator, some way to get the paint from the bottle onto the stamp. And you don't want to apply it directly from the bottle onto the stamp. As you can see, this is so intricately carved that if I were to do that, it would just flood the image and I would get a really pretty bad impression. So instead I need a little applicator of some sort. And I'm using a piece of cut and dry. This is from Ranger. You can also use a cosmetic wedge. You can pick these up at your local drugstore, and these come in handy as well. So whatever you have on hand is going to do the trick. Now because I'm doing heat embossing, of course I also want to have my embossing powder, and I'm using the Gold Satin Pearl Regular. This is from Wow, so I want to have that on hand as well. So let's get started. First, I'm working onto my craft sheet here. This is going to be my palette. And I just need to apply some paint right on here, and then I'm going to pick this up with my piece of cut and dry and apply it onto the stamp. So I'm just going to load this up and tap it directly onto the stamp. Now I don't want to flood it, as we've mentioned before, and I also don't want to be too sparing because then I won't get a really good impression. Just make sure to go around all the edges, right in the center. And then you want to do your stamping pretty quickly so that you don't have any paint drying on the block. And then stamp it as you normally would. Lift off, and then immediately you're going to apply your embossing powder. And in this case, I just applied it in kind of some select areas. I didn't do the entire piece, so whatever preference you happen to have is going to be just fine. Now, in order to get that embossing powder off, I just need to get my folded piece of scrap paper, and then I'm going to tap off the excess in here. I'll use that folded piece to funnel the embossing powder right back into the jar. But for now, I can go ahead and heat set this. So I'm going to heat set this, and then we'll be right back and ready to put together the rest of the card. Now that my heat setting is all done and I have my embossing powder melted on here, I think you can see that shine on that beautiful peacock really does add a nice touch to it. Now here's another little tip. I did notice that right over here on this heart, I didn't get it perfectly stamped. Now that does happen no matter what kind of stamps you're using, and you may just decide to leave it as is because it does have that handmade and handcrafted effect. So it's not really a terrible tragedy, but if you are bothered by that, as sometimes we are, I do recommend that you keep on hand a really fine tip paintbrush. You can see this one has a really tiny tip. And while you still have some of that paint out on your craft table, just add a little bit more on here and you won't be able to tell the difference. So it's a good way to kind of patch up any of those little bits that maybe didn't get completely transferred. So now that I have this piece done, I can go ahead and prep it for the focal piece of my card. But I also wanted to talk a little bit about the background of my card. So you can see the shine on here. Well, this is a foiled background. Very easy to do. So I'm going to clean up my paint on here, and then we can talk about how to do the foiling. So I'm working with Wow foils, and this is in the color Blush. Now these foils, the Fab foils, are meant to be used with a heat medium. So either an embossing tool or a household iron or a foiling, a laminating machine. But in this case, I accidentally got some foil glued onto a piece of cardstock and it stuck, and that's what made my background. So I didn't even need to use any heat with this. So I'm going to show you this process. I've got a piece of white cardstock and I've got my foil. So the foil, again, this is the color Blush. All of the foils will have a colored side, and then the reverse side is kind of a dull matte gray color. So you're always going to be wanting to work with the colored and the shiny side facing you. So what I did here for the background is took a regular glue stick and just applied glue right onto the cardstock. And I just scuffled this on here because I did want to have an abstract background. And then take your foil and place it down here. And you want to burnish it pretty well with your hands. And then what you need to do is let the glue dry completely. You don't need to heat set it or anything else. Just let it dry completely. And that may be, 10 minutes or so. And then you've got a piece that's already dry with the glue on here. And then what you can do is just pull off the foil sheet, and you'll have that gorgeous background with that kind of swooping measure back and forth, because this is, of course, the direction that you applied your stick glue. And the stick glue that I'm working with, this is from Faber-Castell. I picked it up at my local craft store. So it doesn't have to be a fancy glue. Just a regular stick glue will do the trick. And then you've got an instant background for your beautiful embossed stamped focal. So I'll bring back in the original card and we can talk about the rest of this. So I've just simply mounted this up onto some gray cardstock and put this up on foam tape. The Good Luck, this is a sentiment from the Everyday Sentiments from Wow Embossing as well. They've also got stamps. And that's just been glued across here. And then I've got some rhinestone accents up at the top. This is all mounted onto gray cardstock and a little bit of silk ribbon there as a finishing touch. So this is how you can add heat embossing to your block print stamping. I hope you enjoyed today's show. For more ideas and inspiration, please stop by my website at saranaumann.com. If you enjoyed today's video, I invite you to subscribe to Studio SN on YouTube, and I'll keep you updated with a new video at the first of every month. Thank you for joining me on Studio SN, and I'll see you again next time.